La di da di da di da di la di da di da di da da la di da di da 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 la di da di da di da di la di da 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 do di di la di da do da do di di la di da 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 do di di la di da di da do da di da. What up, everybody? It's your boy Tom here, back for my very second YouTube video. And also, you've caught me in my groutfit. No, not gray outfit. Green outfit. Green outfit. I think there's something in my teeth. I'm gonna go brush them. There we are. All clean. Whew, a little story time before hopping into your regularly scheduled program. I went to pick up my Adderall prescription earlier this morning because I'm out, and the pharmacist just goes, "Well, we don't have any Adderall." And I was like, any for me or at all? She goes, "Nope, none. It's a national shortage." You know, I'm probably going to be a little low energy this video. My favorite part about the whole situation is that the way I find out that there is none of my prescribed medication is by going to the pharmacy to pick up the medication that, by the way, my insurance refuses to cover despite the prescription. Meaning I'm already out of it. So that's cool. That's helpful. Seems like maybe there could be a better system in place for notifying people. Anyway, I'm pissed. So for this video, I wanted to talk just a little more about, the philosophy I've adopted for designing the game. And I've summed it up into a nice bite-sized, very clickbaitable chunk. That probably was loud. There comes a point when tradition becomes limitation. Pretty catchy, I know. And what I mean by this is, when I set out to design the coil, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just making like a low-budget reskin of some high-quality game or really successful game that already exists. It was important for me to really try to do something different and not be constrained by the expectations of the card game genre. What I mean by this is I really wanted to try to identify what value that I could bring to the table that really isn't there already, or is at least underrepresented. It's not like I didn't look at existing games, IPs, and mechanics when coming up with how I wanted the coil to play. It would be dumb for me to just, refuse to take inspiration from other games, because there's a lot of really good games out there, and I'm just some dumb guy, So of course I'm going to look at what I think works in other games and see if I can adapt that to my own. Another related point is that, like I said earlier, I'm not just changing things or doing things differently for the sake of uniqueness. Instead, what I want to do is look around at things that are maybe not as mainstream and try to identify whether or not it is because they're actually not very great, or they're just not as familiar, and so therefore they might just get passed up. Now, this idea that I want to break away from tradition also applies to fantasy itself. The coil is probably not going to look the way you might expect a fantasy or dark fantasy setting to look, but more on that later. So, in the first video I made, I talked a little bit about resource and mana systems in other games, and how that sparked the idea for making my own card game. And I said that was an area of design that I thought was a little underexplored. So today I want to dig just a little bit deeper in that. So we're going to hop over here to my Obsidian Vault. For those of you who don't know what an Obsidian Vault is, it's basically just like if Google Drive let you click between your files. So this is a little preview at all my different notes and keywords and things like that that I've been working on for the game. So it's getting a little bit complex, this web here. You're seeing things like Bessel and whatnot, but I'm going to pop over to how it all started. I'm not going to completely go through my notes here. I'm just going to, scroll through quickly, see that there are documents I'm working off of, and then just pop back over to here and just tell you. So in my mind, there's like two major methods for mana or resources. And those are the Hearthstone method and the Magic the Gathering method. The Hearthstone method is, you start with 0 mana, and then on turn 1 you get to 1 mana, and then turn 2 you have 2, 3, 4, on up until 10. And this method has definitely become, the industry standard, and that's not for, no reason. It's simple, it's intuitive, it requires little cognitive load for the player. You just really kind of focus on playing your cards. One of the great things that this does is it eliminates some of the really bad RNG that you can run into with these innately random games. A card game is shuffled up set of cards in a deck, and you draw from the top, and it's a random card. So, RNG is going to be present pretty much no matter what. The fact that you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to draw mana from in your deck means that there will be no games where you just can't play your cards. So that's great. That's a huge plus. But it's not all good. Something that this system does is it makes all the mana generic. There are different classes in Hearthstone, for example, but you are limited to playing cards from only one class in the neutral set. Like if I wanted to have like a Warlock and Paladin deck with a blend of the two mechanics, I can't do that. And so what that does is it limits creative expression. This is because all cards take the same type of mana, where in Magic the Gathering, which we'll get to a little later, you have to have a certain type of mana to play certain types of cards. And the reason that these games then limit you is because there will always be like a best card at each mana value. So if everybody could put any card they wanted in their deck, it would homogenize deck building, because if you didn't play the best card at each slot, then you would just inherently be at a disadvantage. Another consequence of this system is that it really places a lot of emphasis on curving out. And that means you want to play a 1 cost thing on turn 1, a 2 cost thing on turn 2, a 3 cost thing on turn 3, and on, because that's the most efficient use of your mana. You are using it all each turn, and generally, the more expensive a card, the more impactful. For the first few to several turns of the game, decks are optimized to curve out. Quick recap of the Hearthstone method. Very simple and intuitive. There's a very low cognitive load on the player, and it eliminates the feels bad moment of just not being able to play your cards. However, it limits creative expression on the part of the player, as well as limiting play patterns by incentivizing you to curve out. So now let's talk about the Magic the Gathering method. In Magic, mana takes the form of cards that go into your deck that you then draw from. You're not guaranteed to draw them. Obviously, your cards are in a random order. But what that does is it allows you to decide how much of your deck will be made up of lands, which is what the mana cards are called. The lands are divided into 5 different colors, and you need to be able to use one or more lands of that color in order to play a card of that color. And there are no classes or regions that your deck has to fit within. You get to choose how many of the 5 colors go into your deck. The natural consequence being if you get too ambitious and include all 5 but don't have enough of each color of land to play your cards, you're just not going to be able to. This mana system really encourages player creativity. There is no hard limit on regions or classes or colors in this case. Another great boon of this system is there's so much more granularity to mana costs. For instance, something that requires the use of 1 blue mana is easier to cast than something that requires the use of 2 blue mana. So you can break down cards at not just their total cost, but also how difficult or restricting their color requirements are. However, there are some pretty serious consequences to this system. I think one of Magic's biggest problems and the most pervasive problem is that no matter what, no matter who you are, no matter what you do, you will always have non-games resulting from one or both players drawing far too many or far too few lands, regardless of whether or not the decks are built with the optimal land to other card ratio. And secondly, something that is not necessarily a damning issue, but is something that should be mentioned nonetheless, is that this does increase cognitive load. You need to be worrying about your lands and the ratio you put into your decks. And while to some people that is a very fun experience and a very interesting puzzle to solve, to others they just want to get into the game and play their cards. Now, those are the 2 major systems, but they're not the only ones I looked at. I'm not going to go into each individual game that I looked at in addition to those, because I just don't want to spend that much time on this video, but I really find myself interested by games that combine the cards that do things and resources. And 2 games that do this in a really cool ways are Flesh and Blood and Inscription. In Flesh and Blood, you can basically discard cards to produce your resources to play your other cards, and Inscription is a game where you need to sacrifice cards that are on the board in order to play for the cards in your hand. So I think you'll find that those inspirations are pretty apparent in the system that I've landed on for the coil. And you may be asking yourself, well, Tom, you went over Magic and Hearthstone methods, but what about the coil method? Don't worry, I got it right here. I'm not going to go over the specifics of the game's mechanic right now because I don't think it's ready. Not ready enough to put out there with full confidence that this is great. But to break down the core concepts, I wanted to increase player creativity from the Hearthstone method while eliminating as much as I could the feels bad moments in the Magic the Gathering methods that arise from not drawing your lands. So I really took a lot of inspiration for the game Inscription, in which you have a normal deck and a deck of your resource cards. There are different types of mana in this game. Soul is what I'm calling mana. And you can put as many types in your deck as you want. And just like in Magic the Gathering, there's only a soft limitation imposed on you. If you don't have the right type of shrine to pay for your cards, then you're out of luck. And that's just sort of a natural deck building consequence. Now, I didn't want to run into same problems in Magic where you don't draw lands, so it is deterministic that you will draw from your resource deck. You can always choose to draw from it as long as there are cards left in it. You start with a limited amount, and you need to turn the cards in your hand, or even sometimes the cards that are on the field, into your shrines that go into your resource deck. So, as long as you are planning ahead and paying the upfront cost of losing access to a certain card to turn it into a shrine, you can guarantee that you will always have more mana. My hope for this system is that it will allow for a wide range of player expression as well as play patterns and reduce or eliminate the amount of feels bad variance that leads to non games. Before I wrap up, I wanted to circle back to something that I said in the intro. This game is not really going to look like what you might expect when you hear fantasy. I've grown up my whole life as a fantasy geek, and over the last 10 years or so, I've had the pleasure of seeing the genre sort of grab a chokehold on the mainstream media. Thank you, George. And that's been great, honestly. But along with that is the inevitable consequence of popularity. When investors don't want to take risks on their investment, instead want to go the proven easy route that makes money. Because of that, I have become a little frustrated with how formulaic fantasy is as a genre. That's not to say that there is no good fantasy that is new or current. There's a lot, and I eat it up. But I do find myself kind of grading against how stale or tired a lot of the tropes are in fantasy these days. And I just don't really want to contribute to that. I want to do my best to explore underexplored tropes, themes, stories, whatever. What I'm trying to say is that I want to try out new ideas that you might not see very often, but at their core, they remain true to what makes fantasy, in my opinion, such an amazing genre. Or maybe I'm just pretentious. You tell me. Anyway, I think I'm just about done yammering on. I'm pretty much finished flapping my gums at ya. Let me know how you feel about these videos and the project as a whole. I want to make these ones kind of more focused. Today was sort of broad design concepts, but I'd be really interested in doing like art process videos and diving into like specific mechanics in the game in the future. So anyway, let me know in the comments what you would like to see next, and again, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It helps out a lot, and I really want to be able to keep making these videos for you and bringing you along in the process of trying to make a really cool game. Bye.